Okay folks, my name is Joe Cantillon, I work at RoFit. Some of you know me, some of you don't. What we're going to do today is it's an introduction to the sculling oar, or the offshore scull, or the offshore oar that's used for FISA Offshore, for coastal rowing. It's the exact same, or they are more or less the exact same oars as are used by the more traditional and previously the Olympic rowing, the river rowing. So what I have here is I have a selection of oars. I'm just going to run through what we're going to do. I'm going to show you the type of oars that are available. I've tried to pick some of the more popular and common brands and the ones you'll see around, but there's no specifics and they're more or less the same. I'm going to have a look at the grips that are used. We've got a selection of grips, the different types of grips that are used, how to maintain them and so on, how to set them up. The type of blades that you're going to see, the blades can be, they're pretty similar, but there are a lot of nuances within the blades. The fat end, of course, that goes in the water. And we're going to look at the sleeves and collars, just, you know, what the names are. Some are called buttons, some are called collars. We're also going to look at setting up sleeves, collars, and then lengths of oars and so on and so forth. There's some pretty standard measurements that have been taken over the years, and these have been found to, they're tried and tested kind of measurements, and people stick to them. Manufacturers manufacture them in that kind of, in those brackets, but you can have any length of oar. It's just certain things have been found to work better than others. They're also defined by what the boat that you're using is set up. Now I know that the guys are going to be, Peter is going to be doing some of the rigging of some of the coastal boats for you, and we use a thing called span. Span is pin to pin. So if you have two gates into which or rowlocks into which your sit, the two pins, the distance from pin to pin is called your span, and we use that as a gauge for setting up some of the measurements. Okay, just going to show you some of the types of oars that we have. Okay, so one thing that we have here is we have a Macon. This is a St. Michael's oar I punched. It's a Macon. It's a symmetrical oar. It's a longer oar than you will see, and it's also wooden. You won't see many of these wooden oar shafts anymore. Everything's gone carbon fiber now, much lighter, much tougher, and performance-wise, it's much more reliable. Okay, so this is Macon. Macon, right? I'm going to show you an empacker skull here. So the empacker, very noticeable and very readily recognizable shaft here. It's got that kind of weave, formerly used rowing for Ireland, and that's called a chopper blade or a hatchet. Some people call them big blades. This one here is the Smoothie 1, or at least the Smoothie 1 equivalent. Concept 2 kind of define a lot of the names, but don't, you know, they're very similar, okay? As you can see here, that's the sleeve, and this is the collar or button with the handle up here, and the adjustable 10 centimeter adjustable grip or handle on the grip, okay? So here we go, that's your empacker. We have a nice Swift here, brand new. Lovely blade, nice shaft actually, lovely clean blade. Okay, everything is getting more rounded, technology is improving, and it's got an edge protector as well. Okay, I'll talk about that in a minute. It's called a Vortex Edge by Concept 2. It's got a different sleeve, different handle, of course, very same setup up here. You see these two screws, we'll talk about that in a minute. It allows you to adjust the length of the blades. Alright, again, carbon fiber, very common in offshore is Croker, okay, our good old friend Harold Croker. Does some great videos on boat setup, on pitching, rigging, everything like that. Learned a lot from him, go check it out. That's the sleeve there, it's a Mark 1, it's an old type of sleeve with a wear plate on the back there. Croker called these buttons. The rest of the world, or a lot of people anyway, most of the rest of the world call these collars, okay, and they're different again, and they're not interchangeable. Blade, very much a Croker blade, but you can see it's a chopper blade. It's very similar to the previous blade I mentioned, which is on the empacker, which is very similar to the Smoothie 2 and Smoothie 1 of Concept 2. Okay, so these are all names and brands. I wouldn't worry too much about them. Lovely finish for the Crokers. They're designed, in the old days, they were designed for very hot weather, so they've got a different setup in here, different chemical components that go into it, but they're all a plastic sleeve which is set up to sit into your gate. The gate is, or the rowlock, and the rowlock will basically hold it at a particular angle. Usually it's 4 to 5 degrees over square, and that allows an easier release. It doesn't shaft, okay? More on that later. Again, an adjustable length usually, but you can see this one is fixed length, okay? So there's no adjustable, little bit of a wooden handle there, and it's got the pink, the narrowest grips, and that might be for a trainer. Okay, so this is probably a trainer blade used by the Get Going, Get Rowing crew, run by Derek Bowen of Rowing Ireland. Just leave that down there. We come back here. This is the up-to-date, the newest, greatest, finest thing from Concept 2. Okay, it's a skinny, as you can see, you can pick your teeth with it. It's got a comp blade. The comp blade is shorter, it's deeper, it's also got a vortex edge in it. The vortex edge is about 99% edge protector. It's 1% performance improvement, but that's in the most optimal environment. Personally speaking, I prefer to have that than nothing at all. Some crews and some clubs don't like having something at the end of their blade. That's an entirely individual preference. Okay, as you can see, it's much smaller. I think the specifics are that these thinner blades are 1.6% improvement performance over a 2,000 meter course because there's less windage. Okay, the wind is not being held up by a thicker blade. Just show you the two blades side by side, and you can see immediately there's a small difference with the upper one, the Concept 2. You can also see with Concept 2, this is the best thing they have on offer at the moment. These are one of the first blades I got over from the guys in the States as demos. We've got a very recognizable green sleeve. I love working with these, they're really nicely engineered, okay, but they're very strong. There's an adhesive that gets pumped into it, very big pumping gun. Otherwise, you've got a very big forearm, but they get pumped into it when you remove them and replace them, which is something that's recommended if the sleeves get worn. This is the collar. Nice Jubilee clip in there that allows you to move it around and change where the collar is positioned. And of course, you've got the information here on the end of the sleeve. So there's often information that makes no sense to you whatsoever until you know. So a lot of these things are easy until you know how. If you have any questions, just contact me, email me, or the stupider the better. I love questions like that. Usually if I don't understand, I'll figure it out myself, but 9 times out of 10 I can give you the answer. And, what's wrong with asking a question? Everyone has to learn. Nice, easily adjustable, a lovely shaft. You can see how long it is here, but here we go. We've got a 5 centimeter adjustable grip here, and that is actually moved by a big screw here. So we'll get to that in a moment, okay? So they're the different types, the different brands. We also have Wintec out there. We have Braca, very common in the coastal industry. Braca are denoted by, you can see the orange sleeves. You'd see them around. Mantis will be glad I said that. You also have Wintec, Braca. That kind of covers them all, actually, doesn't it? Swift. If I think of anyone, if anyone remembers one that I haven't thought of, do tell me, okay? So Empacher, Swift, where have I got a list here? Concept 2, Empacher, Swift, Braca. That's pretty much it, okay? Okay, guys, so the grips, with different types of grips, you probably noticed, you've got anything you want. It's all up to yourself, but generally speaking, the grips are denoted by colors. Colors don't necessarily mean anything from manufacturer to manufacturer. This is the thinnest Concept 2 spongy grip. That goes on a fixed 10 centimeter. Then you have the exact same type, but it's on you can see there, it's got a kind of a bit of a mechanism, and if you rattle it, you can see the long screw inside, and that goes on the 5 centimeter adjustable Concept. Another suede Concept 2, 5 centimeter adjustable, and again, of course, I have tons of Concept around the place, but this is another spongy kind of grip that goes on one of the removable ones, which I'll show you in a moment. A few other things with regard to grips. I find that with grips, people find that there's a grip, for example, on a croaker, which they really like. As you can see here, it's pink, and they wonder, can it fit on a Braca? Yeah, usually they can. Sometimes they can't, okay? Honestly, sometimes what you'll find is you have a Braca or a croaker with an insert, and this is the insert, okay? And you try and put one of these sleeves on it, and while you make it fit, it'll fit on a diameter that's still too wide. Now, it might work for you, but it won't be the original diameter designed for this. So there's a lot of little nuances to it. Again, easy when you know how. Ask me the question if you want, okay? This is the mechanism that allows you to slide it in and out and make the oar longer or shorter. So we'll get to that in a moment as well, okay? So lots and lots of grips. Find one you like, all right? I have something to say about grips as well, which is keep them clean, okay? It's like washing your hands. If you keep your grips clean, it stops any buildup of crap and residue, which slips when you're rowing, okay? Nothing worse than slipping out and losing the control of the oar, okay? What you find with, I'll use the concept as a good reference, but it doesn't matter. What you find with these guys is, I'm holding here, which is what I would call a stroke side concept, okay, or a stroke side oar, all right? So stroke side oar would be known as a port oar in America. Bow side oar would be known as a starboard oar in America for obvious reasons. We just have a little bit of a different terminology, but it all means the same. When that sits in the gate, remember what I said, when it sits in the gate that Peter's going to talk about, it sits so that the oar is at an angle of 4 degrees. I don't know if you can see that, but the oar will sit slightly forward so that when it goes in the water, it leaves the water easier at the finish, okay? If it were set so that it was going into the water at an angle like that, it shafts. So what you want to do is you want to set it up right. If you don't know how to set it up right, there's loads of information online, okay? Or you can get somebody to do it for you who knows what they're doing. It's not a biggie, but it's, when done right, big difference to be made. What you also find is you need to service the oars, and specifically your sleeves, okay? Some sleeves get a bit tired. This one's getting a little bit tired here, and what that means is, because it's worn down, when it sits in the gate, it doesn't sit at 4 degrees or 5 degrees or whatever way you've set it. It'll sit slightly skewed forward or back, or it'll be a little loose. So that's kind of okay if you've got beginners and you don't really, you know, they don't have the feel for it. But when you move up the ranks a bit, or when you really want to know where your oar is, when you can't look out, when you're in the middle of a race, you want to know that that oar is sitting right, then you need to maintain it a bit. How you maintain it is you literally take off your sleeve, your button, okay? Remember the button I mentioned? So these are the croaker buttons, very obviously croaker, okay? That's a symmetrical croaker. I'll hold it in front of my chest there. It's symmetrical. You have asymmetrical ones as well, and they're for different sleeves. So this is where things get a bit complicated. Ask the question, look up your oar. You can find it on the manufacturer's website. Manufacturer's guidelines are quite good as well. And this is a Slick 40 croaker. It's a sculling oar with fixed handle, and it's an S6 trainer. So it's kind of heavy, okay? The reason it's heavy is it's not the high-grade carbon, so to speak. It's actually got a glass component or a fiberglass component in this. It's heavy, it's more resilient, it's not as light, it's probably more flexible, which is good for beginners because they don't want to damage the back, but equally it's a little bit more give in it, just like the Macons have a little bit more give in them as well, okay? It's an important thing to remember. So I recommend a softer shaft with a Macon for beginners, but if you don't have that, that's no problem either, okay? Back to the sleeves. They wear down, so what you got to do is you got to take them off, and taking them off involves flamethrowers and chisels and hacking and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't want to damage your blade, get somebody who knows what they're doing to do it, okay? Please, whatever you do, follow the manufacturer's guidelines for the epoxies when you put these on, okay? You can possibly interchange, you know, sleeves onto these. It's not recommended entirely. Sometimes you have no other choice. Manufacturers don't make them anymore, or you know, you just have to have a sleeve, and you know, that's it. But do follow the manufacturer's recommendations with the adhesives. You'll find using Tech 7, for example, in one of these, it seems fine now, but over time it will wear and you have no pitch. Secondly, what you'll find is removing it subsequently to service it properly, you'll find it very difficult and possibly poisonous, because you've got to use a flamethrower to get rid of it. Or what you'll find is you're going to be hacking away at it and you're going to end up putting a big sliver of carbon fiber in your finger, and it's not nice. I've been down this route several times. So what I would recommend is wear gloves whenever you're handling these guys. Should have put these on first, but hey, nice intro. Okay. When you are looking at the oars, I'm just going to give you a bit of nomenclature. What I mean by that is just names. So these are called, as I said, buttons for croaker. And usually with Concept 2 and the rest of the world, they call them sleeves, but that's fine, same. Collars, okay? These are called sleeves by everyone. So that's a green sleeve from Concept 2, very recognizable red sleeve from Wintec, it's one of their new ones. Very, very recognizable, I love these ones from Croaker, great engineering involved in these, okay? The Concept one, again, great engineering, much tried. I mean, you look at the World Championships, it's 75-80% Concept 2, and that's the river or the Olympic World Championships, the Olympic rowing, we call it the Olympic, or the freshwater rowing, okay? They really kind of bagged it and they know what they're doing. Alright, you also have clams. This is a croaker spacer, and this is a Concept 2 spacer, or known as a clam, which I think is a clip-on load amplification module. Yeah. So it basically means you put it on there and it increases or decreases the inboard. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Tools you might need: screwdrivers, Phillips heads, a range of Allen keys, socket sets. You need a T15 or a T20 for usage with the new Concept 2. T20 is very common. They're Torx heads. They're kind of the star shape. They're used in the Concept 2 rowers, but they're T27s. These are T20s for the oars. Flathead screwdriver, measuring tape, go metric. I'm lost when it comes to imperial. Won't even try it. And sometimes it's handy to have a spirit level. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute, is to do with your pitch. Okay? What you might want to find as well is when you're actually getting yourself set up, find some numbers. Don't be scared of finding the numbers that people use, and then afterwards you can actually develop your own numbers. Okay? One of the key components to that is I would recommend going on to World Rowing. They have a coastal rowing document. It's page 30 of it, and it shows you how to set up your oars. Okay, one of the things is they choose a very standard span. Remember where I said the span there earlier? It's point to point or pin to pin, they call it. The span we're going to choose is 160. It's actually recommended 158, 159. I'm just going to say 160, not for any particular reason except half 160 is 80. It's easier to deal with. Okay, so the oar lengths they recommend are 284 to 289. Concept 2 will sell you the middle ground oar at 284 to 289. It'll arrive in at 284. How do you know that? It'll say it at the end here, okay? I don't think you can see that, but it'll have a range of 284 to 289. And how you actually change that, or how you might change that, we'll show you very shortly. What you want to do is you want to be aware of what oar length you want. Bigger people want bigger, longer oars, possibly. Shorter people possibly want shorter oars. That isn't always the way it goes. If you want a high rate, you probably have shorter oars. If you want a low rate, you use longer oars. Okay, it's the leverage. It's where you put the fulcrum in the lever that really makes a difference. And the gearing is basically your inboard, which is the measurement of the face, the working face of the sleeve, the collar. The working face of the collar to the end of the oar is called the inboard, and then the working face towards the end of the oar, down the middle of the shaft, is called the outboard, and that one divided by the other will give you a gearing. Okay, so the outboard divided by the inboard generally gives you a gearing. This is about 2.25, I think, at the moment, and what it is you an oar which is set at 287. Why? It's something that somebody would have found worked for them, or that their coach found worked for them, and then they would set the inboard. Remember what the inboard is? The inboard is the working face of the collar to the end of the oar. And how you measure that? Quite simple. Get your measuring tape, working face of the collar, and you measure it out to here, and that's at 88. Okay, so 88. Overall length of the oar, I wouldn't believe what's written at the end of an oar ever. I always double check it. Somebody stuck it on a Friday and it didn't stick where they wanted it. They don't care. You, however, should. So what you do is you measure it by going down the middle of the shaft, okay, and you measure it all the way to the end of the oar. And lo and behold, that comes up at 287. So that's good enough. We know that the sticker on the Concepts, which is right here, measures correctly. But I always double check it. Now let me do that again. I'm just going to show you how I do it, and you can see it a little better from where you were there. Okay, first and foremost, down the shaft, so follow the shaft all the way. You can do it with two people if you want, all the way to the end. And I have a good measure there, 287. As you see, I'm here for the camera, I'm not where I want to be. And what I'm doing is I'm going to right overhead it on 287. Okay? If you want to change the length of your oar, these oars, 9 times out of 10, will allow you to adjust. Remember, there are some that are fixed. Remember the trainer oar earlier? that would have been purchased by somebody whenever, and they would have fixed, or they would have bought it fixed. Fixed are a bit cheaper, they're not as flexible, but 9 times out of 10 you don't need to change a trainer oar because everyone comes in at the same level. It's only when you move up the ranks a bit, or you want to get into gearing, or conditions and weather conditions. For example, a headwind might mean you need to have a different gearing. You might need to increase the inboard so you get more leverage, but you might want to make sure the oar is shorter. You know, whatever your coach has told you to do or you want to do to try out. What you find with these then is you can't do anything of that nature. So we'll go back over here. There's two ways of changing the length of an oar. Number one, with the concepts, what you do is you take your T20, remember the one I was telling you about? And this is a concept, and by the way, many of the other manufacturers, a 5 centimeter adjustable oar grip. So it's a handle and grip assembly. You want to just open up the collar there. See what I'm doing there? Just opening the collar. And then what I want to do is I need to take into account if I want to reduce it. So I'm going to reduce this about 3 centimeters. I know it's 287. I'm going to estimate where it is, or I'm going to use the mark there which says 284, and I'm going to screw it clockwise. And what's going to happen, you see the grip is moving towards my thumb and the shaft, and that's moving all the way down, and there it is at 284. Once that's done, no need to move this anymore. I tighten the collar here, or the grip collar, bit of a difference, and that means it's good and solid. That's changed the overall length by what I would estimate to be, or what I hope is, 3 centimeters. I'm going to measure that now, and I hope to get a 284. Down I go. Going too well. And I'm happy with that, 284. So that's changed my length, it's gotten it shorter. You can do the opposite and make it longer. Remember, you've only 5 centimeters to play with, and you find out what that range is from the measurement plaque here on the concept oars. Other oars, you just have to actually adjust it and see where it goes to. Don't go beyond the range. Going shorter, it's okay as well, but remember when you go shorter, things get a bit tighter too, okay? So I've changed the length of the oar. What I need to do next is I need to set my inboard. Now my inboard has been reduced by 3 centimeters. But the inboard is, by and large, always going to remain the same. Remember earlier I mentioned the span, pin to pin, is 160. That's 1.6 meters. So divide that in 2, you get 80 centimeters. Rule of thumb that I've always used is half your span plus 6 to 8 centimeters. And the 6 to 8 centimeters accommodates for overlap. Okay, so if you're rowing along, you get left over right overlap is the usual standard. You will get right over left, but please remember, if it's set up for left over right, then the actual gates, which Peter will be talking about, will be set up for left over right. Don't expect them to magically go right over left just because you come along. All right. Another reason you want to do that is you want to keep kind of industry standard, because if you quickly have to change anything, not everyone will be right over left. 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's left over right. Okay. If I'm confusing you, good question for the Q&A session later. Okay, here we go again. I'm going to change the inboard. All right, so what I want to do, again, I'm just using the concept here. It's a good example. I'm going to get my flathead, and that's going to loosen out the Jubilee clip. I don't need to loosen it too much, but I know that I want to bring my inboard back to the 88 that I had originally. So I've shortened my oar, but I want a same inboard of 88. I need to move it that way by 3 centimeters. Now there are numbers on the sleeves for the concepts. Personally speaking, I never use them. They're there and I wonder why. I'm sure somebody knows how, but they're a good estimator, because now I can look and say I'm going from 8 to 11. So I can use that. I guess I do use them, but I don't use them for the accurate stuff. The accurate stuff is where you set it up. Always roll it. If it's slightly skewed one way or another, you'll have proper inboard one side and you'll have an improper the other. So make sure it's 90 degrees or directly across the sleeve. That looks good. I'm going to measure it before I tighten it. And what I want is 88. And remember, it's going to be the working face of the collar. Up we go here. That's just a bit too far. We'll go back a centimeter. Again, do it by eye if you want, or you can adjust it. But you fine tune. And that's 88. Happy with that. Get yourself your Jubilee clip. Flathead screwdriver, if it's a flathead required for this particular sleeve. Remember, there are other brands, I'll show you here now in a moment, that use Jubilee clips, different, they would have a Phillips head, they would have a socket, they might have a 5mm socket. There's a new one out from Croker that's very nifty, it's a quick release one. So there we go, that's my oar. I've changed it from 287 to 284, but I've changed my inboard from 88 to 88. It still meant that I had to change where this lay, because this to there is the measurement for my inboard. So my inboard may remain the same, however I had to change the sleeve, the collar for the inboard to remain the same. Okay? If you look at the World Rowing document, there's a starting rigging recommendation, and that is use oars of 284 to 289. So they recommend 286. It's a really good number to start with. If you find yourself you want more leverage, what you might want to do is get a longer oar. You can either borrow one or you can extend yours out as far as they can go. Gearing, as I said, look into gearing. They'll be talking about that, I hope, with the boat rigging. But there's a great reference on page 36 of the World Rowing document, and that actually gives you kind of a breakout of where you want to be. Don't overthink this. Get used to it. Get used to changing it. You probably know this stuff already, but what this allows you to do is just pencil it in and say, I've tried that, let's try a different gearing. Talk to other people. There's some mad theories out there, and some of them work. Some of them work for some people. You might find that the pins come in and they're at a 150 span. And you say, how does that work? Well, a smaller, more powerful person can't reach out as far, whereas a smaller person wants to reach out to their width or their maximum reach, and they want to apply power at a much higher rate. That would necessitate shorter shafts, perhaps, shorter spans, shorter inboards, okay? You might also find if people are doing, for example, power rowing, they don't have the overlap because power rowing doesn't necessarily have the need for it, okay? So there's little things like that that you might find, okay? I mentioned about watching out for carbon fiber. If you get carbon fiber in your oars, don't be doing this kind of stuff. You'll get carbon fiber stuck in your fingers, and it's literally a needle in your finger. Best way to get rid of it is get a big blade and dig it out. It's not pretty, but what you'll find is it comes out and it's bloody sore. If it gets stuck in there, you probably need to go down to A&E, okay? I would recommend with the handles, guys, I'm just going to show you here a 10 centimeter adjustable. Now, I just adjusted a 5 centimeter. I'm going to show you the 10 centimeter adjustment. I'm going to use this Swift oar here, okay? What you do is you literally loosen these guys here, okay? And there's two screws. Be careful not to open them entirely. If you open them entirely, the inner mechanism that holds them in place will fall away, and then you've got a job putting it back on. Again, not impossible, just a pain in the neck. So I've loosened these. I want to make a longer oar out of it. I literally bring it out like that. See? Nice and long. Okay? Again, Swift have a very nice measurement mechanism in here. Great to go with, great to guide you. Always double check. Okay? So we put it in here. If you have oars like this, and I'm saying this to the offshore coastal community, okay? You all use oars, particularly the croakers. Take them out every now and then, clean them of the sand. The salty water makes a real cement between carbon fiber. Look how tight that fit is. It's a really tight fit. So if you take them out and clean them, and there's this magic thing called warm soapy water. Genuinely, clean them and put them back in. No need to grease them or anything like that. You see some weird stuff out there. But generally speaking, give them a clean on a regular basis. What's a regular basis? Twice a year, okay? So you're buying oars worth several €100. Look after them. All right. This is the adjustment. I've then changed the length of it. I again get my trusty measuring tape. And what I want to do is I want to go down and I want to measure it out down the shaft. Probably know how to do this anyway, guys. Go up, down the shaft. Get the tongue there. And then you can measure the width, or sorry, the length that you want. And you measure that length. Tighten it up. Where are we? And you're good to go. As you can see, this one doesn't have a collar on it, so you'd pop a collar on, very similar as the collars that we looked at previously. Pop a collar on, find the position whereby you get your inboard. Remember how to calculate inboard again. If you're stuck, half the span plus 6 to 8. So let's say 88. Okay, so you pick 88. If it works for you, great. If you want to change it, matter of kind of personal choice. But some coaches can be very, very particularly. I know that Mike Fleming's going to look at some of these numbers and give some really good recommendations. And I would listen to him. He knows what he's on about. Okay. The handles. Just a quick one for you guys. Any of these guys, wash them with soapy water on a regular basis. Okay. If they're not washed on a regular basis, not only is it unhygienic, but it also creates a kind of a slippery slime. And when that gets wet, when you're rowing along, that thumb pressure only keeps so much grip. And the grip as well, remember, blisters burst and all that, it makes it very slippy. All right. I have a bit of sandpaper, got lost, but a bit of 120 grit sandpaper. You can use that on a lot of these, specifically the Concept 2 designed plastic. They actually recommend, they don't really write it too often, but 120 grit sandpaper roughs it up a bit and it allows you to get a better grip. Okay. It's really easy to do. Don't overdo it, but you'll be absolutely knackered before you can actually rub through. So give it a good shot and see if that improves how you hold your grips or how the grip, if it improves it. I'd recommend servicing and replacing your blades on a regular basis. What you notice is if your boat is set up right, there'll be particular blades, and you look at your shafts, and you can see very easily the difference between a really new shaft, a really old shaft and a really new one. Look at the difference in colour. So that's been out in the ultraviolet for a long time. It's been getting well worn. So the possibility is that needs a bit of a change. And what you do is you check, manufacturer's guidelines show you how, but there are jigs which you can put on. And that's where this guy comes in. You can actually set it up so that you check to see if it's 0 degrees. It's meant to be 0 degree at the sleeve. If you don't understand that, have a look at a sleeve. This guy will be a good example, the Concept sleeve. And it's like this side, all right, and the bottom side, they're 90 degrees. You see that? All right, so when they're 90 degrees, you put them into a jig and it will allow you to determine whether that's 90 degrees or 0 degrees. And it will allow you then to determine whether your blade is pitched properly, which is at 0, so that when it goes into the gate will actually pitch it forward by 4 or 5 degrees, depending on what you choose, and then your blade is set up correctly. If, when you put it into the jig, this guy says, no, that's off, then the whole sleeve has to be removed and has to be replaced. And as I mentioned previously, do that right and you're set. Okay? These guys are meant to last 25 years. Concept 2 said. They should. Let's see. What I would recommend, back to the thing, get a professional to do it. If you want, give me a ring or anything like that, get somebody to have a look at them. Even over the phone, it'd be quite interesting because sometimes you can avert some of the big issues and it isn't necessary to replace and change everything. What I find more often happens is people don't realize what they have, and very quickly you can go through the stock of oars that you have in the club and realize you got a lot of good oars that are very functional and good to go. Okay guys, I think that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please in the Q&A session or email them to Marguerite. She'll look after you, Kieran will look after you, and I think we're doing a live Q&A so you can actually post questions to me. Equally guys, if there's anything that I said which you feel that is incorrect or anything, please open it up, let's chat about it. But remember, a lot of this is personal preference. It's not about one particular brand, it's not about one particular manufacturer. One thing I would say, however, is coastal rowing, the differences between coastal and river, they're minute, but they can be quite substantial in certain regards. For example, saltwater and the performance of saltwater on some of these means you probably need to take a little bit more care of your oars than the guys that are on the river, okay? Okay, folks, I'm going to leave you there. Don't forget, if you have any questions, write them down, get them to me. I'm just going to go around there and turn it off. See you in a bit.